3 of the most haunted places in the world. Places are just as much as part of a spooky story as the characters in it. It often takes us by surprise that we don't go to discover more about these mysteries. Here are 3 of the scariest places we have come by. Welcome to the channel, subscribe and let's dive in. Bangar Fort, India. This deserted stronghold stands out in the middle of the jungle 200 kilometers from Delhi. According to legend, a sorcerer who was turned down by a local princess cursed the region. Today, visitors may still see the spectacular ruins of the fort. Even though it can be difficult to assess paranormal activity, there is a problem when the government warns you to avoid a particular area. One such location where you will see signs warning you not to stay after sunset is Bangar Fort. The fort, which has a 17th century history, is undoubtedly not a place for the weak of heart. Even though you may be in awe of this place's magnificent architecture while you're here, many people claim that they frequently feel restless and nervous. Even some tourists mention that they sometimes experience strange paranoia as if someone is following them. Despite its fame, there is a reason why people don't stay on the fort's grounds for very long. A nighttime visit or stay inside Bangar Fort is utterly prohibited. In fact, the Archaeological Survey of India, ASI, has even placed signs warning against lingering on the property after dusk and before sunrise at various locations in Bangar. Anyone who managed to enter the fort at night, according to the locals, never came out alive. This is because it is thought that ghosts walk the fort at night, which makes the area a hotspot for paranormal activity. According to mythology, Guru Balu Nath, a hermit, cursed the fort at Bangar. The sage used to meditate on the site where the fort now stands. When the king begged for permission to build a fort there, the sage consented, but only if its shadow did not fall on him. Sadly, the king's assurance that the fort's shadow wouldn't fall on him while he was at his home did not come true, and the curse of the hermit followed, which caused the entire hamlet to be obliterated. It's really odd to see that every home in the neighborhood lacks a roof. The sage who cursed the village to its eventual destruction is thought to be to blame. Locals claimed in reference to this that it is impossible to build a roof on these houses and that even if one is erected, it will collapse, and that similar tragedies had killed numerous people in the past. There are many spooky tales about Bangar's unfortunate visitors. The people think that because of the agony and suffering that have marked its past, terrible disaster and accidents have occurred. Locals reportedly mentioned that 3 daredevils once chose to stay on the grounds of Bangar Fort after sundown to determine whether it was actually haunted. Although having a torch, one of them nonetheless fell into a deep well before being rescued by his companions, who hurried to take him to the hospital. Yet it appears to have been preordained because all 3 of them passed away in a car accident while they were traveling to the hospital. The Paris Catacombs. The Paris Catacombs are genuinely frightening, with the remains of more than 6 million people stored in the underground passages. The tunnels are open for tours today, but they are not for the faint of heart. Even though only a small portion of the underground is accessible to the general public, it is well worth the visit if you don't mind the dark, dank, and macabre atmosphere. This is one of Paris's most haunted locations. It is also ideal if you love the city's history, are looking for something to do in Paris when it's raining, or are seeking something unusual to do. The former Tumissoir quarries under the plain of Montrouge were a convenient location that was at the time outside of the capital and were chosen by the Paris authorities. These quarries, which had been in use since at least the 15th century and had since been abandoned, were a minor portion of the labyrinth, which covered over 800 hectares beneath the city. Charles Axel Guillemot, an inspector of the Directorate of General Quarry Inspection, was in charge of setting up the location and planning the bone transfers. The purpose of this department, which Louis XVI established on April 4, 1777, was to consolidate the abandoned quarries after significant ground collapses under Paris in the middle of the 18th century. The initial evacuations took place from 1785 to 1787 and involved the Saints Innocents Cemetery, which was the largest cemetery in Paris and had been closed in 1780 after being continuously used for almost 10 centuries. Their remains were removed from the graves, common graves, and charnel house. The bones were moved at night to avoid opposition from the Parisian populace and the church. The quarry employees divided and placed the bones into the galleries after dumping them into 2 wells at the quarry. Parochial cemeteries in central Paris, such Saint Eustache, Saint Nicolas de Champs, and the Bernardines Monastery, were suppressed in 1814, but transfers continued after the French Revolution until then. They were restarted in 1840, amid Louis Urban Philippe's redecoration and the city's House Mignon reconfiguration from 1859 to 1860. After being dedicated as the Paris Municipal Ossuary on April 7, 1786, the location adopted the fictitious name Catacombs in honor of the Roman catacombs, which had captivated the public ever since their discovery. Several stories surround this place. By chance, Philibert entered the Paris catacombs while attempting to retrieve a certain liqueur from a cellar. Philibert wandered about the tombs alone, the only light coming from a single candle, and he found himself disoriented and perplexed. Several think he might have been drunk at the time. Philibert's flame eventually went out and everything became black, leaving him unable to leave the tomb's utter darkness. Only 11 years later, a group of cat lovers discovered his body. He was recognized thanks to the hospital key ring that was fastened to his belt. A spirit is laid to rest in the catacombs, exactly where he passed away, with a tombstone that details how he died. Catacombs and cataphiles folklorists assert that on November 3rd each year, Philibert's spirit supposedly stalks the maze-like tombs. According to a well-known Paris catacombs tale, something dreadful occurs in the graveyard after midnight. If you find yourself in the Paris catacombs after midnight, stay alert. That's when the walls start talking, so goes the folklore. It is supposed that ethereal voices will attempt to convince you to delve ever further into the tombs until you are unable to find your way back out. The Forbidden City, Beijing. The Forbidden City, in the heart of contemporary Beijing, is not a place many people would think to be haunted, but ghost hunters who are interested in local legends know better. One ghost, which originally surfaced in the 1940s, is that of a white-clad woman who can be heard wailing throughout the palace's corridors. Whether or not you believe in ghosts, the majestic Forbidden City is a must-see for tourists in Beijing. One of Beijing's most well-liked attractions is haunted and taunted by something. It is understandable that these walls, which functioned as the imperial palace throughout the Ming and Qing dynasties, have many intimidating mysteries given their 6 centuries of history. Everyone who disobeyed the imperial rule was subject to death during a time when execution for treason or disobedience was a frequent and common occurrence. But the emperor didn't give the death order. Hundreds of concubines, guards, servants, and an army were also housed in the palace, and murder was frequently committed by an envious guard, concubine, or servant who wanted to be near the emperor. As a result, many people died within these walls, and the scars of the past's violence can still be seen today. The imperial palace did not undergo a transformation until the late 1940s in order to host the museum and develop as a tourist destination. In order to protect the historic grounds, guards were placed in position at this time. It was these guards that first noticed weird events happening inside the Forbidden City's gates. Guards acknowledged seeing strange animals moving fast around the grounds late at night. Others have reported seeing weeping ladies in the concubine quarters of the palace, and one young man even admitted to seeing a crying woman going around the grounds while wearing all white. When he talked to her from behind, she didn't hear him and didn't turn around. Some claim that the Forbidden City's allegedly paranormal occurrences at night are the very reason why it never remains open to the public past midnight. Thank you for watching. Follow for more.